At Serafina's house, she's working on her assignments late into the night. Suddenly, a pile of books crashes onto her table. The servant explains that it's the work her dad assigned her for the night. The servant says she'll return in the morning to collect the assignments and warns Sarah not to disappoint her parents again. As soon as the servant leaves, Sarah shoves all the books off the table in frustration. Standing amidst the mess, she sees John's image flash through her mind. Even as a cripple, John fights, bluffs, or escapes from his challenges. So, what's stopping her from breaking free of her own situation? Morning arrives, and while Sarah checks her laptop, the servant reappears to collect the assignment. Sarah tells her she hasn't touched the books and won't be giving her anything. The servant warns her of the consequences if her mother finds out, but Sarah interrupts. She declares she'll speak directly to her mother. When Sarah moves to leave her room, the servant tries to stop her and insists on delivering the message herself. Sarah freezes time, leaving the servant immobilized, and heads to her mother's room. Standing outside the door, she feels nervous but reminds herself that if John can stand up for himself, so can she. She opens the door and finds her mom reading documents. Her mother looks up and immediately critiques her appearance, telling her to remove her extensions and fix her jacket. Sarah begins by saying she won't do the assignments anymore, startling her mom. She continues, saying she wants the freedom to walk through the house and dress how she likes. Her mom cuts her off, insisting that instead of complaining, Sarah should be grateful for her privileges. She reminds Sarah that her path to success has been carefully laid out for her. Her mom warns her not to end up like her older sister, a failure. Sarah counters, saying she finally understands why Layla ran away. The house is cold and lifeless, and her sister was tired of being treated as a disappointment. Sarah accuses her mom of refusing to acknowledge how her actions caused everything to fall apart. Enraged, her mother activates her power to freeze Sarah in place and moves to slap her. But before the slap lands, Sarah activates her own power, nullifying her mom's ability. Her mom is shocked and demands to know how she did it. Sarah smirks and replies that she's simply faster. Sarah then uses her power again, freezing her mother. Her mom demands she stop, but Sarah ignores her and states her terms. She wants a ticket to Wellston by tomorrow because she refuses to stay another day in the house. She also demands her phone and credit cards be reactivated since she'll be packing that night. Her mother, still frozen, says she won't allow her to leave. But Sarah replies that she'll leave regardless. The only choice her mom has is how it happens. Sarah warns her to consider how people will react if both her daughters run away. As she prepares to leave, she mocks her mom, insisting she only flies first class. Her mom yells at her as she walks away. Outside the room, Sarah closes the door, feeling both exhausted and relieved. For the first time, she feels free. Back at Wellston, Blake and Ison are reading the front page of the school's newspaper. The article, written by an anonymous source, accuses the students of setting the smoke bomb at the mall. Suddenly, Blake, Ison, and Remy are summoned to the headmaster's office. Inside, the headmaster tells them they should know why they were called. He then asks if the details in the article are true. Remy denies it, explaining that the article doesn't tell the full story. She clarifies that they followed the culprit but were mistaken as the ones who set the bomb. They also assure the headmaster that they've already cleared things up with the authorities. The headmaster is glad to hear that, but reminds them of an important rule. At Wellston, they have the freedom to use their abilities as they wish. However, once they step off campus, they must be more cautious because Wellston's reputation depends on their behavior. He advises them not to act impulsively in similar situations and to consider the consequences of their actions. After leaving the office, Blake comments that the meeting wasn't as bad as he expected. Eisen jokes, surprised that the headmaster even reads the school's newspaper. As they walk, Remy grows curious about how someone at school could have known about the events. The incident was recent and took place over the weekend. She begins to wonder if someone has been following them. On the rooftop of the school, Arlo looks annoyed as the door opens. John enters, cheerful to have found Arlo again. John approaches and asks if Arlo enjoyed the mango boba while holding a binder of papers. Arlo sighs and asks why John is on the rooftop again. John replies calmly that he just wants to take a break. Arlo reminds him that the rooftop is off limits and says John should understand that by now. John counters, saying that if Arlo truly wanted to throw him off, he would have done it already. John remarks that Arlo spends a lot of time there. Arlo admits that the rooftop is quiet and helps him clear his mind. This statement causes John to recall his time as king, spending moments alone on the rooftop. Lost in thought, John suddenly remembers he has class and prepares to leave. Before going, he asks Arlo if he's free after school. Arlo replies with a firm no, saying he has errands to run. John insists, asking if he can tag along. Arlo refuses again, but John presses him, telling him to meet at the school gates after classes. Without waiting for a reply, John rushes off to class. Arlo stands there, wondering how Sarah manages to deal with someone like John. After classes, Arlo is waiting at the school gates. When John arrives, he's surprised to see Arlo actually showed up. John asks Arlo where they're heading next. John and Arlo are on a bullet train heading to an unknown destination. John, growing impatient, thinks about how long they've been on the train. He finally asks Arlo where they're going. Arlo tells him to relax and wait until they arrive. Meanwhile, at the airport, Sarah has just gotten off her plane. She tries calling John but gets no answer, concluding that he still hasn't bought a new phone. She takes a taxi and starts heading toward Wellston School. Elsewhere in the city, Arlo and John step off the bullet train. John looks around and asks where they are. Arlo calmly explains that they've arrived at the Wellston Turf War location. John immediately becomes anxious and reminds Arlo that he's a cripple. He protests that he's not used to this kind of environment and thought Arlo's errands would be something simple, like shopping. Arlo tells him not to worry, assuring him there won't be a fight. He's just there to meet some people. In the deserted area, John and Arlo encounter a group of people. John freezes when he recognizes them. They're the same ones who broke his phone. Tense, John demands an explanation from Arlo. Arlo remains calm, telling him to stay put and wait for a moment, and he approaches the group. Suddenly, Arlo gives them a signal. Without warning, he orders them to lock John down. A girl activates her power, forming sharp claws over her hands. She charges at John alongside another guy. The scene catches John off guard, triggering memories of Claire's betrayal. Before he can react, the girl gets close and slashes deep cuts into his arm with her claws. Before he can recover, the other guy uses his ability to create a whirlwind, hurling John backward. John crashes to the ground, his body battered and bleeding. The girl places her claws against John's neck, pinning him in place. Arlo smirks and says, "Surprise!" John, lying on the ground and seething with anger, feels the sting of betrayal once again from someone he trusted. John lies on the ground, held down by the two attackers while blood drips from his fresh wounds. Arlo stands over him, composed but cold. He begins introducing the attackers to John and remarks that John probably already recognizes them, as they were the ones who broke his phone. John grits his teeth, anger flaring, and asks how Arlo knows about that. Arlo's expression remains steady as he replies that he told them to do it. The words hit John like a blow. Arlo continues, his voice sharp and condescending. He asks if John ever stopped to think why someone of his status would tolerate being near a cripple. He smirks and admits that he didn't bring John there to be his friend. He never had any intention of that. He reveals that he hates him. Suddenly, John's mind flashes back to a painful memory. He's holding a letter, his hands trembling. It's apparently a love letter written by Claire. John's face flushes with excitement as he clutches the note, his heart racing. As he reaches the meeting spot indicated in the letter, he freezes in place. Claire isn't alone. She is surrounded by a group of people. John's heart sinks as she begins to speak, revealing her true intentions. The betrayal sends John into a blind rage. He charges toward them, fury overtaking him. The memory fades, dragging John back to the present. Arlo's voice cuts through the haze as he explains that he brought John there for one reason, to put him in his place. Looking down at John with a sinister grin, he wonders how much it would take to break him. He gestures to the empty, desolate surroundings and states that there is no one around for miles. No one to save him. They have all the time in the world to make sure John understands his true position. Arlo stands and begins pacing. He reveals that everything John has experienced in the past few weeks was his doing. Arlo states that Seraphina's suspension, his limited contact with her, the mid-tiers attacking him, and every single encounter were orchestrated by him. Frustration and despair bubble inside John. He had come to Wellston to turn over a new leaf, to leave his past behind. He hadn't harmed anyone and had tried to stay out of trouble, yet everything was ending the same way. Frustration and anger fill his face. He shakes, trembling from the weight of it all. He thinks to himself that he isn't the monster. They are. Arlo looks down at him, triumphant. He asks if John has anything to say. John doesn't respond and keeps his head lowered. Arlo shrugs and turns to the girl, ordering her to help him understand. The girl steps forward, claws at the ready. Suddenly, John lifts his head and screams Arlo's name, his voice echoing across the barren area. A massive whirlwind of black air erupts from him, sending Arlo's allies flying backward. They crash to the ground, stunned and struggling to comprehend what just happened. The aura around John is suffocating, a dark and chaotic energy radiating outward. His fury manifests as a yellow glow in his eyes, and a strange black aura swirling around him. The group stares in disbelief. They realize that the power of the cripple is actually throwing them back. Arlo's expression shifts slightly, but not to fear. He smirks, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. One of Arlo's allies is confused, as he was told that John was a cripple. He notices that Arlo is still smiling, so everything must still be going according to Arlo's plan. Suddenly, black claws emerge from John's hands, similar to the girl's. John charges toward Arlo. As he's about to strike, the girl barely manages to stop him. She is shocked to discover someone with the same ability as hers. John doesn't flinch when clashing with her. With ease, he uses his claws to cut deeply into her body. The girl collapses, bleeding heavily. John prepares to strike again, yelling at her not to interfere. Before he can attack, the other guy creates a whirlwind to push John away from the girl. John counters by creating a black whirlwind around him, stopping the guy's wind attack. The guy is shocked to see that his attack barely affects John and that he's also using a wind ability like his. Arlo's allies decide to attack together to stand a chance against John. The guy creates a whirlwind to launch the girl forward, while she readies her claws. John calls them trash and uses his power to accumulate wind in his hands, launching blades of wind at them. The girl is surprised since these wind blades are not part of her allies' abilities. She narrowly dodges them, but her friend is struck directly. The girl becomes enraged and charges at John. He easily evades her attack, accumulating wind once more. He creates a final whirlwind, launching the girl into the air. The wind guy can barely move, but he spots his friend falling rapidly. He prepares to save her, but John appears behind him and pierces his arm with his claws. Wind guy finally admits defeat, acknowledging that John is far stronger than the two of them. He begs John to let him save his friend, but John shows no interest. John pushes him down with his foot, disregarding his plea. Wind guy continues begging, saying that John can do whatever he wants with him, but at least let him save his friend. The girl keeps falling, and the guy screams in desperation. John strikes him again to silence him, as the girl crashes to the ground. Both of them lie unconscious on the floor, battered and wounded. John turns his gaze to Arlo, filled with fury. Arlo looks at him, surprised to see what John has been hiding all this time. John launches one air blade toward Arlo, but he easily deflects them with his arm. John then creates a whirlwind around Arlo to obstruct his vision and charges in, aiming to strike with his claws. Inside the whirlwind, Arlo focuses to sense the direction of the attack, thinking that a little wind isn't enough to make him activate his barrier. John appears and strikes with his claws, but Arlo evades the attack and remains unharmed. Frustrated, John decides to use the wind to rise above the ground and charges at full speed toward Arlo to strike again. As John gets closer, Arlo thinks that once he activates his barrier, John will probably be able to use it too. Arlo decides that the best course of action is to end the fight with one blow. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.